Hello and welcome. I'm TJ Walker with Media Training Worldwide. This is our monthly office hours, a chance for you to ask me questions about any aspect of public speaking, media training, presentation skills, and verbal and nonverbal communication. I'm going to go over a couple of topics with you, but most of our time is really devoted to you. Thank you for joining me. Many of the students from Udemy are here with us, many of my own clients, some of you from Curious, and a few other of the various online platforms. So again, I want to thank you for joining me. This is the third one of these, and I hope to make this a regular feature. We're doing this the first week of every month at varying times. One of the things I want to hear from you about is what is the best time of day? We've done 5 o'clock, we're doing 4 o'clock Eastern, and I do want to give you various options to figure out what's really best for you. In the news, with respect to media training, the Jeb Bush campaign is getting a lot of attention for finally hiring a media trainer. Now, for someone like me, this is fascinating. Here's a guy who's been thinking of running for president for more than a decade and is in the middle of a campaign, has gone through 4 debates, has been universally panned, not just from liberals or the mainstream media, but by conservatives for his debate skills, his presentation skills. And he's just now hiring a media trainer. Now, he's hired John Krashauer, according to reports from PR Week and other other news organizations. I don't know John personally, but I certainly know him by reputation. This is the guy who basically ran the media training company with Roger Ailes for many years before Roger Ailes started Fox News. Fox News sends many of its correspondents, its commentators, and hosts to John Krashauer for training. And John was one of the co-authors, and I think he was essentially the lead writer in Roger Ailes' book, You Are the Message, which, regardless of your politics, does hold up and is still a great, great book to read if you're, and I assume because you're here, you are in fact interested in communication. So if you are a professional communicator, I would recommend that you include that in your library because it still holds up well over time. Check it out. It's You Are the Message by Roger Ailes, but John Krashauer is the one who essentially wrote it. And he's just been named the media trainer to Jeb Bush. Here's the problem if you are, in fact, Jeb Bush. Right now, people's opinions are already starting to settle when it comes to primary voters. So if he does dramatically better in upcoming debates, the media already has a narrative that everything is bad for Jeb Bush. Conservatives don't like him. They don't think of him as a conservative. The mainstream media likes to pile on him now. He doesn't have a logical base. Now, part of this may be the politics and the brother and the father and all of that. Part of it is simply his demeanor when he is campaigning. Some of you have heard me opine on this in the past, but when Jeb Bush is on stage, he just looks annoyed. He looks flustered. He looks like he'd rather be any place other than on a debate stage talking to the American people about why he should be president. Part of being a good communicator is just exuding the sense that you like to talk, that you like sharing with people your ideas about how to do things. And I have to say, he's doing a very poor job of this. He looks as though he wishes the primary could just be over and he could be appointed. I do want to toss this open to questions, and we're still learning this whole format. Some of you are regulars with Google Hangouts, and some of you are new. So I do want you to know that there is an option. If you click on there, you can send your comments in and I can read them and share them with you. You can also email me, tj at mediatrainingworldwide.com, tj at mediatrainingworldwide.com, and I'm happy to share those questions with you as well. I do have some questions for you. Earlier this week, I received some criticism from a student, and hey, nobody likes criticism, but I try to practice what I preach, and that is to read, listen to all criticism. Even if you don't like some of it, try to learn from it. One of the criticisms I received from one of my students, was that he did not like my backdrop. He found it wildly distracting. Now, you might be looking at this saying, there's nothing that distracting. That's because it's no longer a video. So this is just a picture behind me. Let me show you. I'm going to take you behind the scenes and let you know what's really going on here. I'm not in a big TV studio. Typically, I have a video clip on. I'll show you what it looks like right now. And I'm just going to go on the floor and hit play on my laptop. So now you see the way it traditionally has been. If you were in the Udemy courses or the other courses and you saw me, you see little images going by, you see screens, you see people on the TV screens. This is a video clip. And the reason I selected this is since I'm a presentation coach and a media trainer, being in a media environment seems to make sense. It seems to fit with what I'm all about. So that's why I have that. Since it's relatively dark, it's easier to light because the light is on my face. Now, this is a home TV studio I'm in right now. I'm actually in a closet, believe it or not. And I'm able to make training videos, do TV interviews with major networks all over the world, right from this closet with a little backdrop, a few nice lights, and a high quality microphone. So I want your opinion. If you don't want to weigh in right now, I would like you to post your comments, whether you're watching this on YouTube, my blog, or any other forum. Just post the opinions you have. Do you prefer it like this, or do you prefer it without the things moving around? Part of my theory was it's just a talking head. It's just me. So if there's something a little distracting in the background, what does it really matter if you stop looking right at me? I mean, you've seen my face at this point. It's not like you're missing anything important visually if something were to distract you. And I'm just trying to create a little more variety. But I have had criticism in the past from others that this backdrop was distracting. And truth be told, I've had criticism no matter what backdrop I have. So I finally concluded that this was the least objectionable. But that's why I went one more notch and I just pause it. So again, I'm going to hit pause on this video and you'll see it just like hitting pause on the DVR. And that's why it will no longer move and you'll just see it. There it is, frozen now. And you can see the line below. I will get rid of that. So at least that part won't be distracting. And now we can go about our business. But I would be interested in your opinion on what backdrop. If you can think of another backdrop that would work, here's the problem with white. White is harder to light. It's brighter. And some of you had suggested green screen. When green screen, then you got to put images in. There's post-production involved. Because I'm a speaking expert and speakers can't really rely on fancy production and editing, what I try to do when I'm working with you, when I'm teaching people, when I'm doing training videos, is do it without a net, without the extra enhancement of post-production editing. Because I want to keep things simple, because when you're speaking, you've got to just speak. You can't rely on high-tech gizmos to save you and to make you look better. So that's why I don't really, and part of it is just a time function. I don't want to spend the time editing different backdrops for every single video I do, because I sometimes do, well, I've done as many as 120 videos in a day. So that gives you a little backdrop there and gives you a little more sense. Now, we do have a few viewers. Many of you find it more convenient to watch this on demand. If you have any questions, let me see if I can pull those up. If you have questions, there is a way to post your thoughts in the chat room. So I'm just going to do a test right here. I can see that. If you're watching, feel free to either say hello, or if you would like to post a question, I'm happy to take that right here and right now and answer. By the way, if you are watching this on demand, if you post questions about any aspect of dealing with the media, dealing with presentations, the spoken word, I will answer them in a separate video that you'll see on YouTube on demand and possibly in next month's webinar too, but you won't have to wait that long. I'll probably answer you live same week. So those are that's the biggest issue, Jeb Bush, in the news that I saw this week that relates to us. Of course, there's always news about speaking because every single day, millions of people have to speak around the world. And there is news about speaking everywhere too. Part of what I do in preparation for you, helping you, and just being better at it is I try to read every single story that has public speaking in it. I try to follow the top 100 bloggers and experts in my field and then showcase for you the very best examples. So if you want more information on the best speaking articles, the best new how-to videos, there's several ways of getting it. A lot of it I post right on my blog at mediatrainingworldwide.com/blog, or if you go to the homepage, news. Also, if you go to my Facebook page, if you go to Facebook and type in TJ Walker Media Training Worldwide, you'll find a page, and every single day there are dozens and dozens of links there that take you to all the top stories, blog posts, articles, videos, giving you not just my ideas and my content, but the ideas from all of the top leaders in the industry. Twitter is another place. If you connect with me, twitter.com/TJ Walker or at TJ Walker, you can get my Twitter feed. And I typically spotlight 50, sometimes even 100 of the best articles, videos, and insights that deal with public speaking. Now, some of you, if you can't connect directly on the Google Hangouts, you can also email me your questions. You can reach me anytime, tj@mediatrainingworldwide.com. That's tj@mediatrainingworldwide.com. If you send me your questions there or comments, I will look before this Hangout is over and will incorporate any of your suggestions there as well. One of the things I try to do is be as responsive as possible to your needs and wishes. There's been very favorable response with my online students around the world on my own site, on Udemy and other platforms, to this idea that I'm going to critique your presentations. At some point, it may become unmanageable and there's just too many each day. But so far, I've been doing this for about 4 months now. Any of my students, if you post a video of your speech, of your media messages in any online course where you're taking a course from me, I will watch it and I will critique it. I'll tell you what your strengths are, what's working, what you should do more of it, but also try to give you some constructive feedback on what to tweak and what to get even better. So please, might as well take advantage of it. Far, far, far less than 0.1% of my students actually do that. So there's not a long line. Most people, unfortunately, are just not willing to expose themselves by posting video fully clothed of themselves speaking. It still seems scary. It still seems uncomfortable, and it creates fear. Now, one of the things I've noticed, since I do read and view and consume so many stories each week, blog posts, how-to videos on public speaking, the amazingly high percentage of stories, how-to articles about the fear of public speaking. And I have some mixed feelings about that. On the one hand, it's great for my business, and it's great that so many people are fearful of speaking as it prevents them from learning and it forces them to come to people like me. On the other hand, there's a part of me that says, enough already. How many articles do we have to see that says public speaking is one of the top fears are the number one fear people have on every book of list. And Jerry Seinfeld points out that means most people would rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy. I mean, you see it again and again and again and again. Here's the thing. I want you to take this with a grain of salt. Something tells me if you're on the top of a cliff and someone says, I'm either pushing you off or you give a brief toast speech, you would speak. If you're in an airplane and someone says, I'm pushing you out and I'm putting venomous snakes on top of you, or give a nice after dinner speech to the people in row 13, you would figure out a way to give that speech in row 13. So I don't really believe that it's the number one fear people have. I do think that public speaking is something that most people don't look forward to, and they have anxiety about it. And unlike being pushed out of a plane or off a cliff or being thrown a bag of snakes on top of you, public speaking is something that you could, in fact, experience in a given day or a given week. Because if you have any kind of a job or you're in school, you're going to be asked to speak publicly. So it is something that does happen. But here is the bigger problem. Here is the fundamental issue as I see it. I don't believe people actually have fear of public speaking. I think that you're misplacing fear with laziness. Hear me out. I know you think I'm being insensitive. But if I came to you, or if you came to my house and I said, hey, I'm hiring you, Sam or Sally, my garage is a complete mess. It's a disaster area. And your expertise is helping people organize their homes and their garages. I suspect what you would do is say, okay, TJ, it's a nice day. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take everything out of your garage, put it on the driveway, and we're just going to divide things you've used in the last year, things you haven't. Things you haven't, we're going to throw away or donate. That's generally the first step of organizers. Well, what if I just said, you know what, I'm just afraid of cleaning my garage. I'm fearful. Would you believe me? And meanwhile, I go inside and I grab a beer and I watch football games. Would you believe I'm genuinely fearful of cleaning my garage? Or would you say, TJ's just being lazy? He's not fearful of his garage, cleaning his garage. Anyone can clean a garage. He's just being lazy. He won't do the first step. The first step doesn't take skill. I mean, presuming I have use of my limbs, and I do, and I'm not ill. Anybody, I mean absolutely anybody who doesn't have physical impairment can clean a garage. And the first step, taking everything out. Well, if I refuse to do that, I'm not fearful of cleaning my garage. I'm just lazy. Well, that's how I feel when it comes to people who tell me they're fearful of public speaking. Because I tell them, okay, here's your first step. Speak out loud, capture it on video, talk to your own cell phone, watch it, figure out what you like, what you don't like, do it again. Try to do more of what you like, do less of what you don't like. Keep doing it until the stack of stuff you like is really big, the stack of stuff you don't like has diminished to nothing or almost nothing. Do that and you won't be fearful of speaking. I've never in my entire life had someone do that and then tell me they're still fearful of speaking. So in my mind, that means people aren't fearful of public speaking. They're just being lazy. Oh, I can't practice on video. Well, that's like me saying, you know what, I really have to sit on the couch, watch football, and drink beer. I really can't take stuff out of my garage and put things into piles to figure out what I like and don't like. Okay, we do have several more viewers. If you are viewing and watching this live, if you could just put something in the group chat, just so I know you're there. You're not going to be called upon if you don't want to participate. You don't have to ask a question. But I just want to make sure I have properly enabled all of the chat function. So if you can see me or hear me and you're watching this, please just say a quick hi in the chat bar. which on mine is just on the right. You click the button for chat and it posts it right there. So please let me know if you can see that. Also, if you're watching this on demand, more than happy to answer your questions on any aspect of public speaking, presentation training, or media training. And we'll answer those in videos later this week on YouTube, and will be posted on other social media outlets as well. Wanted to give you a program note on something upcoming. I'm putting the finishing touches today on a brand new course. It will be on Udemy and several other platforms. This is a body language for business people course. Now, those of you who've been through my presentation training courses know that I do spend some time on the best body language for when you're giving presentations. This is a course that really helps people with their body language for all aspects of business communication, one-on-one meetings, attending a cocktail party, meeting people, shaking hands, and of course, giving presentations and speaking to the media as well. What do you do with your hands, your eyes, your body? How do you keep from looking scared, stiff, nervous? So some of you have already been into my body language course for speakers. This builds upon that, goes much deeper. It is my first new course this year that I've added to my online platform. So I'm hoping some of you will check it out and let me know if there's anything else you'd like. That does beg the question, are there other aspects of spoken communication that you feel are currently not addressed on various online platforms? Are there other subjects you would like to see addressed in an online course? Please let me know. You can post a comment in the chat box. You can post a comment below this video if you're watching it on demand on YouTube or on my Facebook page or at mediatrainingworldwide.com. Or you can always reach me directly at tj@mediatrainingworldwide.com. Other programming notes I want to share with you. I am in the process of unveiling a new product, essentially, the beginning of January. What I've been doing for so long is somewhat piecemeal, a video just on this topic, a blog post on this, a Twitter on that. And what I'm trying to do is synthesize things in a way that'll be more helpful, more useful to people as it relates to continuing to learn about public speaking skills, presentation skills, and media skills. So what I'm most likely about to launch is a daily streaming television show, podcast, if you want to call it that, that is specific to public speaking and media training. And it'll have slightly more structured segments than what we have here, opening, production, and graphic, stinger, and close. And it will be available in not only video, but audio on iTunes, as well as YouTube, Facebook, and other platforms. The reason I do this is I have found that many people just prefer to listen to content while they're walking, while they're driving to work, or they like to watch video when they are on a plane or on a train, and they're simply more comfortable with the iTunes format. YouTube, as much as I love YouTube, is often limited to people who have the idea, I want something in 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And I want to provide for you one basic home on the internet in the digital world where anything going on that's newsworthy that relates to public speaking or media training, let's say there's a presidential debate last night, you know you'll get the best analysis right there. If a director like Michael Bay freezes on a stage and everyone's talking about it is the worst public speaking moment of the decade, we'll be talking about it the same day or the very next day right there. A place that gives you a review of all new public speaking books, videos, products, software. Really a one-stop shop. And it won't just be my ideas. I'll be featuring the best of the whole world. I'll be drawing upon the resources of top public speaking experts, media trainers all over the world, have occasional interviews. So my question for you is this a show you would either watch or listen to? Is there a particular time that you would, length that you would prefer? I'm thinking it will probably be anywhere from 18 to 25 minutes. A busy day, maybe 30 minutes. A short day, not that much going on, or I'm in a hurry, maybe it's 15 minutes, but something along those lines. Not a full hour, but more than just the typical YouTube video that's single subject focused, that's 2 minutes or 4 minutes long. It would be longer than that. The other idea is I would basically compress all of my current content into this show because, as some of you know, there may be a day where I do 10 different how to videos and analyses of topics in the news that relate to public speaking. Now it would all be in one particular spot where you could access it. Some of you prefer keeping your library in your iTunes or your podcast section of your website or of your cell phone or your iPad. So I'm hoping this is a way to organize things a little better for you and for me. It also means I'm going to need even more topics for content. So I would love to get from you any suggestions on topics that you think would be interesting, helpful to you and the larger community of people who really care about spoken communication, which is what the show will be about. It's not going to be a general show on the news. It's not going to be a political debate show, even though we will talk about politicians from time to time to analyze what they did well, what they didn't do well at moments of major spotlight, such as inaugural addresses, political debates, primary debates, concession speeches, withdrawal speeches. These are all things that really draw people in and get them to think about public speaking issues. Now, a Marco Rubio moment. I'm kidding, Senator Rubio. Those of you who follow politics and public speaking carefully remember several years ago, Marco Rubio was giving the Republican response to the Democratic State of the Union address. And while he was doing it, he sort of lunged for a bottle of water, secretly, furtively took a sip, put the top back on, put the bottle back in the same place. And it just struck a lot of people as ridiculous. It was the most talked about element of his entire presentation. And it took several years for him to live that down. Now, the good news for Marco Rubio is a lot of people think he is the best communicator now in the entire Republican field. He's not on top of the polls yet, but I happen to share that opinion that if you look at pure communication skills, Marco Rubio is the top of the class of the current Republican. Again, I'm not making any endorsements here. There are a number of strong communicators. Trump has many strengths as a communicator. Mike Huckabee, you don't really hear people talking about him much in this campaign. He doesn't have a strong political base, but he's a wonderful communicator as well. Of the Republicans that the insiders give the most credibility to and are perceived as having the chance of knocking off an outsider like a Trump or a Carson, Marco Rubio is considered the top of the class. I have thus far rated him as excellent in the first several debates. He comes across confident, poised, comfortable, likable, full of energy. His exchange last time with Jeb Bush, again, across the spectrum politically, everybody thought Marco Rubio won that exchange. If you recall, or if you didn't get to see it, Jeb Bush is now worried that Marco Rubio is taking some of the same support, financial supporters, political supporters, and he attacked Rubio in a way that's completely fair. He said, your voting record is atrocious, and you should essentially resign. This is a full-time job as senator, and you're not doing a good job. Again, standard political criticism. I'm not knocking it in any way. I'm not endorsing it either. But Rubio was ready. And he just essentially slapped Bush down, and he prepared, he thought about it. He said, well, you said just the other day your role model for this candidacy is John McCain. And you were saying what a great candidate John McCain was and how he should have been president. Well, John McCain also missed all his votes in the Senate because he was running for president when he was a senator, and that's how it's done. Why don't you just admit you're attacking me because some political advisor got to you and told you it was good politics? And Bush, he was sort of left in a stammering pool. Rubio talked over him, but he did it in a way that seemed polite and that seemed respectful and yet still more forceful than his mentor. And that is one reason why I think Marco Rubio deserves very high marks for his communication skills, and why more and more party insiders are saying we got to figure out a way to get this guy to get more support and get nomination. Because again, we're not here to talk about politics, but I don't think it's any big surprise that the political establishment in the Republican Party is quite worried that if Donald Trump or Ben Carson receives the GOP nomination, it will be absolute political suicide for the party, and the party could lose 49 states to Hillary Clinton. That's not me talking. That's not the liberal media. That's what a lot of conservative Republican insiders are worrying about now from a pure communication standpoint. I want to switch gears a moment and talk about some of the other hot topics that have been on the site at Media Training Worldwide in the last week, and other sort of evergreen topics. They're not necessarily all hot topics. But one of my clients from overseas called earlier this week, says, TJ, I've got a situation. I need your advice. I'm going to be giving a speech at a conference. There are going to be 1,000 people in the room, only it's not really a speech. They're going to have me seated, and I'm going to be interviewed by a trade journalist in my industry. So I'm trying to think how I can influence the journalist. I want to figure out what the questions are in advance. I mean, my client had all sorts of thoughts on this, and I had to say time out. The least important part of this process is you figuring out what the questions are. This is not graduate school where you get a pass-fail grade. It's still a presentation. Your focus has got to be the audience, the 1,000 people in that room. What ideas do you have that are useful to them, that are interesting to them? And then how do you make those ideas memorable to your audience? In other words, being interviewed by a journalist on stage is no different than standing up and giving a speech, or it shouldn't be different. Backstory: why are more and more trade associations, conventions, organizations having a journalist come out on stage to interview a newsmaker or someone well known in the industry? They're doing it because most executives, CEOs, and big shots are horrible, lazy public speakers. So what has happened for many years now is the newsmaker comes out, he starts reading a boring speech that some low-level staffer he's never met wrote 3 months ago. He's reading the speech for 20 minutes. Everyone is falling asleep. Everyone is checking email. And then he says, I've concluded my speech. I'll now take questions. And then it gets interesting. People ask questions. The person is through with the script. Speaker puts away the script, looks at the person asking the question, gives examples, gives specifics, gives case studies, maybe gives a story about how this was a problem, how it was resolved in another part of the country or another part of the world. It's interesting. It's memorable. So finally, a bunch of organizers got together and said, well, why do we need all the boring going through the notes and the PowerPoint? Let's just go right to the questions. So that's what's happened. And as a conference organizer, I understand you doing that. There are other solutions too. The organizers of TED have come up with a great solution. They just tell people, you're not going to read. Your PowerPoint slides can't have text. You're not going to get behind a lectern. and you got to be done in 18 minutes. That's all. I mean, people talk about TED speeches like there's some great, brilliant new invention. No, I like TED. I train people for TED. I watch TED. But that's all they've really done is they've just forced people to get rid of the boring garbage that clunks up most speeches. So back to my client who was asking me for tips on preparation. What I said was, certainly if you want to reach out to the journalist and say, hey, really looking forward to us spending time together. I want to do a great job and make everybody look good. Any other particular issues you want me to especially bone up on? If you say it like that, 9 times out of 10, the journalist will appreciate it, will not feel like you're trying to manipulate them, and may share with you a thought. They may even share with you the questions they want to talk about. You haven't lost anything. Now, what is a bad idea is if you call up the reporter and say, send me the questions in advance, because reporters do not like to feel manipulated or controlled by newsmakers. And truth be told, the journalist probably hasn't written them down or even thought of the questions yet. So you're asking the reporter to do something that really can't be done. What I would recommend, and my advice to my client, was think of the handful of most obvious questions you know the reporter is going to ask you about this subject. And then think of the most interesting ideas you have to make it come alive. And think of interesting case studies. Think of the stories to make it come alive. And you will be ready regardless. You want to get to the point where if the journalist doesn't show up at the last minute, you don't care. You're ready to just share. Now, here's a big test for you. If you are better at the Q&A section of a presentation than you are delivering your prepared remarks, what that really means is you have lousy prepared remarks. Doesn't mean one is somehow, it's not easier answering questions than delivering a speech. It's just different. Now, when I'm working with clients one-on-one, this is a very common phenomenon. The person will give the speech, we'll videotape it, then I'll ask questions, other colleagues, other people on the PR team will ask questions, we'll video record that, and watch the whole thing. And a very high percentage of the time, the person, the expert we're training will say, wow, the speech was boring, but I was really interesting in that Q&A. What do you think? And I have to say, I think you're right. So here's the solution. What we're going to do now is let's just take your speech that you prepared and your staff spent months on. Let's take your speech, let's rip it up, and let's just throw it in the trash can. Let's get a clean sheet of paper, and let's just write down the top 10 or 20 questions that you think a reporter would ask if, or anyone in the audience would ask, if they could just have a conversation with you one-on-one. And let's just write that out in big, bold letters. And let's have maybe a word or two to remind you of the client or the case study or the colleague that will remind you of the story that will help flesh that point out. That's your speech now, a single sheet of paper, the 10 questions, and just a word or two to remind you of the story that makes it come alive. For most people, that is a much, much, much better structure for a speech. So if you ever have anyone tell you the Q&A was great, or you just sense the Q&A was great, remember, there is absolutely nothing you do answering questions in reaction to what someone threw your way that you can't do in your own set prepared speech. People have this attitude of, well, for my speech, it has to be set and structured and professional. Oh, and the Q&A, of course, for the Q&A, I can be interesting and give examples and give case studies and stories. Well, again, anything you do in the Q&A, you can also do in your prepared speech. There should never be a time when your Q&A is better than your speech. They should be equally as good. So again, I want to toss out to our viewers here, we do have a chat box. And if you would like to make your comments available, go ahead and just type it in to list. I want to make sure I've put everything in the right way. And forgive me if you have posted something and I didn't get it. So I want to make sure that I'm doing that properly. And I think that I have. And I know some of you like to just listen because you're at work, you're doing other things too, and you don't necessarily feel like typing. That's fine. You can always post your questions later below, whether you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, at mediatrainingworldwide.com, the blog section, or on any other forum. I want to be careful here because politics is something that drives people away. And everybody has an opinion, and it's very difficult to ever convince someone of a different opinion. So I'm not opening this forum up to politics and political debate, but I do think it's important to use politics as a lens into greater communication issues. As you may recall, CNBC, the most recent host of the political debates, has received massive, massive criticism from Republicans, conservatives, even some Democrats and liberals for the way they moderated the last debate. Republican candidates are outraged at CNBC's style. They thought it was too confrontational, too partisan, too gotcha. And I was critical of some of the things CNBC did as well, specifically asking questions like, what's your biggest weakness? Which to me wasn't a partisan question, but just seemed sophomoric. But there's a bigger issue here. The Republicans, and especially the highly conservative Republicans, believe that there is a strong liberal bias in the mainstream media. Again, I'm not here to debate that. And they believe that Republicans would be much better off if Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, other conservative commentators could be the moderators, because then Republicans would be given more respectful hearing. That is the theory that some have articulated. Here's my question. We have seen a rise of conservative media in the last 20, 23, nearly 25 years now. Because prior to 1992, back in 1988, the media game was really controlled by CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. What today we think of as the mainstream media. And certainly what conservatives thought of was the liberal mainstream media. Well, when you look at the track record, if you buy the theory that the media is a big help to the Democrats and hurts Republicans, then you would say, okay, 88, those were the bad old days. 84, you go back from 1968 to 88, that's a big span of time there. You had 6 presidential elections. And it was a time when the media world was completely controlled by the mainstream media, some would argue the so-called liberal media. So if in fact liberal mainstream media hurt Republicans and conservatives, then you would expect that they would have done very poorly in that time period. But in fact, between 68 to 1988, Republicans and conservative Republicans won 5 of 6 presidential elections. They won the popular vote and they won the electoral vote in 5 of 6 elections. The only one they lost was Jimmy Carter in 1976. That was after Watergate, and even that was a close election, a very close election. Since 1988, you've seen the rise of conservative media. Rush Limbaugh really rose to power, certainly had huge influence by 92. You've seen so many conservative blogs, Drudge Reports, Fox News starting up in 96. There's been an explosion of media, conservative websites, podcasts, TV networks, radio networks. Talk radio's gone from just a couple hundred stations to thousands. So you could say it's a golden era for conservative ideas to be expressed directly to voters. So given that, if you buy the theory that more conservative viewpoints would help conservative candidates get elected, then you would say, well, the time period 1992 to present day should be a golden era for Republican candidates running for president because there's been such a shift in the media with so many more conservative voices. But let's look at the results. In 5 of the last 6 elections, when it comes to the popular vote, conservative Republicans have lost since the rise of conservative media. So something is out of whack here. Now, some theorists contend that Republicans were much better off when they didn't have to pander to conservative media and preach to the choir, when they had to speak so that they appealed to the mainstream media and all Americans. It actually helped them politically. But when candidates can focus their time on appealing to Rush Limbaugh, Fox News, they're not appealing to as many mainstream or non-conservative voters, and it's hurting them at the voting booth. What's your theory? I'd love to hear from you, because this is not a pure left-right issue. It's not a pure Democrat-conservative issue. You can be a rock-ribbed conservative and still agree with the theory that the worst thing that ever happened to the Republican Party was the rise of all the conservative media when you looked at the votes, the vote tally. From 92 on, other than George Bush winning a narrow re-election in 2004 against, by all accounts, a horrible candidate, John Kerry, the Democratic nominee, the Republican has lost the general election vote in every single election after 1988. They lost in 92, 96, and 80, let's not forget, Al Gore did win 500,000 more votes nationwide. I understand Bush got to be president. We'll leave that debate for another day. But no one really debates the vote count total in the popular election. The Electoral College controls the ultimate decision on who gets to be president, of course. But if you are a conservative, if you are a Republican, you are someone interested in media, you are someone interested in communication, how do you jive this reality that with the rise of the conservative media, you've seen a tremendous fall of Republican presidential candidates? I mean, it's not 50% or 30%, it's every single election other than one re-election at a time of war when George Bush did win the popular vote. Every single time other than that, since the rise of the conservative media, you've seen conservatives flounder at the voting booth. Is there a correlation? Is it all just happenstance? I'd love to know your theories. So please feel free to comment in the comment section of the YouTube if you're watching it there. If you're watching this on Facebook or any other format, post your comments. I'd really love to hear from you on that. We're about to come to the conclusion of this month's webcast. If you have any suggestions on how to make it better, more interactive, if you have any other questions, please let me know. I would love to hear from you. As always, you can reach me through the forum at Udemy. If you're participating there, you can participate on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/mediatraining. You can go to my blog at mediatrainingworldwide.com/blog, or anywhere you see this, poke around, you'll find a place for a message. I'm TJ Walker. Thanks again for joining me. I'll see you again online, on demand, on my blog, and also right here live next time. Thanks for joining me.